He believed he'd found the love of his life. But what he didn't know was that he'd just stepped into the biggest trap of his life. Before we dive into this story, I need you to do something. Look at your screen right now and tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country or city in the comments below, because what you're about to hear is a cautionary tale that might change how you think about love forever. And if this story helps even one person avoid the same mistake, then James's pain won't be for nothing. Hit that subscribe button right now, because stories like this one could save your life or the life of someone you care about. James Thompson was 62 years old when his world collapsed, not from a heart attack or a financial crisis, but from something far more devastating, the realization that he had become completely invisible in his own life. Picture this. It's 8:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night in suburban Cleveland, Ohio. James sits in the same brown leather recliner he bought 12 years ago, the TV droning in the background, his phone casting a blue glow across his weathered face. His divorce papers are still sitting on the kitchen counter 3 years later, not because he forgot about them, but because moving them would mean accepting that 28 years of marriage had been reduced to a stack of legal documents. His son Michael calls maybe once a month, usually while driving somewhere, always in a hurry. His daughter Sarah sends him Christmas cards with photos of grandchildren who barely know his name. The house that once echoed with laughter and arguments and the chaos of family life now holds only the hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the grandfather clock his ex-wife left behind. James scrolls through dating apps, looking at profiles of women his age, divorced, widowed, looking for companionship. The conversations, when they happen at all, feel like job interviews. What do you do? Where do you live? What are your hobbies? Nobody asks what makes you laugh at 2 in the morning, or what you dream about when you can't sleep. That's when the YouTube algorithm served him a video that would change everything. American man, 58, finds love in the Philippines. His amazing story. The testimonials flooded his screen. Men his age, some older, talking about finding warm, caring women overseas. Women who valued wisdom over washboard abs. Who wanted partnership, not just passion. Who understood that love isn't about how you look in a mirror, but how you make someone feel when they're with you. For the first time in 3 years, James felt something stir in his chest. Hope. Her name was Sophia Cruz, 28 years old, working as an elementary school teacher in Cebu City, Philippines. Her dating profile didn't show her in a bikini or pouting at the camera. Instead, there was a simple photo of her smiling in a classroom, surrounded by children holding up their artwork. Their first message exchange lasted until 4 a.m. his time, 5 p.m. hers. She asked about his work as a retired electrician, wanted to know about Ohio winters, laughed at his stories about fixing broken ceiling fans in the summer. She told him about her students, how little Maria finally learned to read, how the school needed new books, but the budget was tight. She shared photos of her family's small vegetable garden, of her cooking adobo for Sunday dinner, of her reading bedtime stories to her young nieces. But here's what hooked James completely. In 3 months of daily conversations, Sophia never once asked about money, Not his salary, not his savings, not what kind of car he drove. She asked about his dreams, his fears, his favorite memories from childhood. "Good morning, James," became the text message that made him smile before his feet hit the floor each day. Her English was careful but sincere, peppered with Filipino phrases she'd teach him. "Kumusta ka? How are you? Mahal kita. I love you." Those video calls stretched across time zones and continents. Sophia would prop her phone against a window, the golden light of a Philippine sunset framing her face as she talked about her day. Sometimes her mother would wave from the kitchen, or her father would call out, "Hello, James," from somewhere in the background. "Age is just a number," she told him one evening, her voice soft through his phone speakers. "What matters is the heart, and you have such a kind heart, James." For the first time since his divorce, James felt chosen. Not settled for, not tolerated, but actually chosen. If you're watching this and thinking, "I would never fall for something like this," pause for a second. Have you ever been truly lonely? Not just alone, but invisible? Have you ever felt like the world moved on without you? Drop a comment below if you understand what James was feeling, because loneliness makes us all vulnerable. The Philippine Airlines flight from Cleveland to Manila with a layover in Los Angeles took 22 hours and 37 minutes. James counted every single one. He'd never been more than 3 states away from Ohio, and here he was, crossing the Pacific Ocean to meet a woman he'd fallen in love with through a screen. Manila's Ninoy Aquino International Airport hit him like sensory overload. The humid air, thick enough to swim through, fogged his glasses the moment he stepped off the plane. The noise was overwhelming. Thousands of voices speaking Tagalog, English, languages he couldn't identify. The smell of street food mixed with exhaust and something floral he couldn't name. James stood at the arrivals gate, sweat already soaking his polo shirt, scanning the crowd for a familiar face. His hand shook as he gripped his suitcase handle. What if she didn't show up? What if she looked different? What if this whole thing was a mistake? Then he saw her. Sophia stood near the international arrival sign, holding a piece of cardboard with James Thompson written in careful block letters. She wore a simple yellow sundress and white sandals, her long black hair pulled back in a ponytail. When their eyes met across that crowded airport, her face broke into the smile he'd memorized from countless video calls. The hug lasted forever. She felt real in his arms, warm, smaller than he'd expected, smelling like jasmine and something sweet he couldn't identify. Her heart was beating fast against his chest. "Welcome to the Philippines, James," she whispered in his ear. "Welcome home." Those words, "welcome home," hit him harder than he expected. When was the last time anyone had said that to him? Subscribe to this channel right now if you want to hear how this story ends, because what happens next will shock you. The next morning, Sophia took him to meet her family in their barangay, about an hour outside the city. The jeepney ride was an adventure itself. The colorful public transport packed with commuters, music playing, the driver navigating traffic that seemed to have no rules whatsoever. The Cruz family home was modest, a concrete structure with a corrugated metal roof surrounded by banana trees and a small vegetable garden. But the moment James stepped out of the jeepney, he was surrounded by warmth. "Kuya, James! Kuya, James!" Sophia's younger sibling shouted, using the Filipino term of respect for an older brother. Her mother, Luz, a woman with gentle eyes and calloused hands from years of washing clothes for neighbors, embraced him like he was her own son. "You are so handsome," she said in broken English, patting his cheek. "Sophia is very lucky girl." They'd prepared a feast. The small wooden table groaned under the weight of dishes James had never seen before. Adobo, chicken and pork simmered in soy sauce and vinegar, pancit noodles loaded with vegetables, fresh lumpia filled with vegetables and served with a sweet sauce, perfectly steamed white rice with every dish. Sophia's father, Ricardo, was a man of few words who worked construction when jobs were available. His handshake was firm, his eyes direct. "You take care of my daughter," he said, his English careful and deliberate. "She is good girl, pure heart. She deserve good man like you." The evening was pure magic. Someone brought out a karaoke machine, apparently a requirement at every Filipino gathering. James found himself singing "My Way," while Sophia's nieces giggled and clapped. Her teenage brother taught him basic Tagalog phrases. Her grandmother, tiny and wrinkled, held his hands and spoke rapid Tagalog that Sophia translated as blessings for his journey. "They love you already," Sophia whispered as they sat on the bamboo bench outside, watching fireflies dance in the darkness. "My family, they have good feelings about you." "I love them too," James replied, and he meant every word. "I love you, Sophia." The words hung in the tropical air like a promise. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too, James, so much." For 2 weeks, they lived like a couple on their honeymoon. They traveled to Boracay, where the white sand beach stretched endlessly under skies so blue they looked fake. Sophia looked radiant in a simple sundress, her laughter mixing with the sound of waves. James hadn't felt this happy in decades. They took a ferry to Bohol to see the famous Chocolate Hills, over 1,000 perfectly cone-shaped hills that turned chocolate brown in the dry season. Sophia held his hand as they climbed the viewing platform, and James felt like he was 20 years old again. "I want to show you everything," Sophia said, her eyes bright with excitement. "My country, my culture, my heart. I want you to fall in love with the Philippines the way I've fallen in love with you." They talked about marriage during those perfect days. Sophia's family had been asking when James would propose. He found himself browsing jewelry stores in Cebu, imagining Sophia in a white dress, imagining a life split between Ohio and the Philippines. But it was during these magical days that the first small request came. Sophia's Tita Rose, her favorite aunt, had been diagnosed with diabetes. The medication was expensive, about 3,000 pesos a month, roughly $60. The family was struggling to afford it, along with their other expenses. "I hate to ask," Sophia said, her voice small and embarrassed, "but maybe you could help us just this once? Just until my next paycheck comes in?" James didn't hesitate. He transferred $500 to Sophia's account that same afternoon. How could he not help the family of the woman he loved? "You are so kind," Sophia said, tears in her eyes. "This is why I love you, James. You have such a generous heart." Back in Cleveland, James lived for Sophia's daily messages. But now, mixed in with her sweet good morning texts and photos of her students, came new conversations, opportunities. Sophia had been talking to her cousin Miguel, who ran a successful computer shop and internet cafe in Cebu. The business was booming. Students needed computers for school, adults needed internet for work, tourists wanted to stay connected. With just a small investment, they could open their own location. "This could be our future, James," Sophia explained during one of their evening video calls. "Your business experience, my knowledge of the local market. We could build something beautiful together. You would be my partner, not just my boyfriend." The business plan she sent looked legitimate. Detailed cost breakdowns, projected revenues, even a location she'd scouted. $8,000 would cover the initial setup. Computers, furniture, internet connection, permits. James wired the money within 24 hours.
Then came the land opportunity. Sophia's family had found the perfect lot for their future home. Close enough to her parents to help with care as they aged, but private enough for newlyweds. The seller was a Filipino-American who was moving back to California and needed a quick sale. "This is once in a lifetime, James," Sophia said, her voice urgent. "Land prices are going up so fast here. This lot is worth at least $40,000, but he's asking only $22 because he needs to sell quickly. In 2 years, it could be worth $60,000. James emptied his savings account. $22,000 transferred to an account Sophia said belonged to her older brother, who would handle the legal paperwork. But something was starting to change in their conversations. Sophia's phone often lay face down during their video calls now. She'd excuse herself frequently. Work emergencies, family obligations, errands that couldn't wait. Sometimes she'd call from locations he didn't recognize, offering vague explanations about where she was. "Where are you right now?" James asked during one call, noticing an unfamiliar background. "Just at the mall, love," she replied, but her smile seemed forced. "Running some errands from my mother." Comment below if you can see the red flags James was missing. Sometimes, when we want something so badly, we ignore the warning signs right in front of us. James's second trip to the Philippines was supposed to be a celebration. He'd bought an engagement ring, a simple but beautiful solitaire from a jewelry store in downtown Cleveland. He planned to propose on the beach in Boracay, to visit their internet cafe, to see the land where they'd build their future home. Instead, he found himself sitting alone in his hotel room at the waterfront hotel in Cebu at 2:47 a.m., staring at his phone. Sophia hadn't met him at the airport. A family emergency, she'd texted. Her grandmother was in the hospital. Her phone was going straight to voicemail. The next morning, James took a taxi to the Cruz family compound. The driver, a chatty man named Ben, made conversation in broken English. "You're here for vacation, sir?" "I'm here to see my girlfriend," James replied. "Ah, you have Filipina girlfriend. Very good, sir. Filipino women very loyal, very loving." But when James arrived at the familiar house, Sophia's mother, Luz, looked shocked to see him. Her face fell, and she avoided his eyes. "Sophia not here," she said, her English suddenly more broken than he remembered. She very busy now, work, you know." But James saw something else in her expression, pity and guilt. He spent that day playing detective. The address Sophia had given him for their internet cafe led to a vacant lot with a "for lease" sign. The land they'd supposedly purchased was still for sale, according to the real estate sign posted in the yard. At the municipal office, there was no record of any business permit application under Sophia's name or his. That evening, Sophia finally appeared at his hotel. She looked different. Her makeup was heavier, her clothes more expensive than he remembered. She wore a gold necklace he'd never seen before. "James, I can explain everything," she began, but her voice lacked the warmth he'd fallen in love with. "Where's our cafe, Sophia? Where's our land?" She sat on the edge of the hotel bed, suddenly looking very young and very tired. "There were complications," she said, not meeting his eyes. "The permits, the legal requirements, everything here is so slow, so bureaucratic. But we can try again. We just need to be patient." More patient or more money? The silence stretched between them like a chasm. It was Sophia's younger sister, Elena, who finally told James the truth. She found him the next morning, sitting alone at a Jollibee restaurant near his hotel, picking at his breakfast and looking like a man who'd lost everything, which in many ways he had. "Sir James?" Elena's voice was soft, hesitant. He looked up to see the 19-year-old girl sliding into the seat across from him. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. "I'm sorry," she whispered, glancing around nervously. "I'm so sorry about my sister." "She has a boyfriend," James said. It wasn't a question. Elena nodded, tears starting to flow. "For 2 years. His name is Carlo. They want to get married, but he has no job, no money. He's trying to start a motorcycle repair shop, but..." "So I was funding their relationship." "Sophia, she thought..." Elena struggled with the words. "She thought you were just lonely American man who wanted to feel important. She never meant for it to go so far. She never meant to hurt you so much." James laughed, but there was no humor in it. "She's right. I was lonely. I did want to feel important. But I also wanted to be loved." "She did care about you," Elena insisted, in her way. "But she loves Carlo. She's loved him since high school." That evening, sitting in his hotel room, James did the math. $43,000. His retirement savings, his security, his future. Gone. But the money wasn't what broke him. It was the realization that the past 10 months, the happiest he'd felt in years, had been a performance. Every smile, every laugh, every "I love you" had been scripted. He'd been living in a movie where he was the only one who didn't know it was fiction. He'd bought a dream, but he'd paid for it with his reality. The confrontation happened at a restaurant called Larsian BBQ in downtown Cebu. James had followed Sophia there, watching from across the street as she met someone, a young man with confident eyes and an easy smile. They held hands across the table, looked at each other the way she had once looked at James, through a computer screen. When Sophia saw James approaching their table, her face went white. "We need to talk," James said simply. Carlo started to stand, but Sophia placed a hand on his arm. "It's okay," she said in English. "I'll handle this." They walked to a quiet corner of the crowded restaurant. Sophia's hands were shaking. "I never meant to hurt you," she began, but James cut her off. "Why?" he asked. "Just tell me why." Sophia looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since he'd arrived in the Philippines. "Because you wanted me to," she said finally. "You wanted a young, beautiful woman to love you. You wanted to feel special, to feel chosen. I gave you exactly what you wanted." "I wanted it to be real." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "It was real," she said, and for a moment James heard a glimpse of the woman he'd fallen in love with. "My feelings for you were real, but they weren't the kind of love you needed. I cared about you, James. I really did. But I love him." James felt something shift inside him. The anger, the betrayal, the heartbreak, it all crystallized into a single, clear understanding. "You're right," he said quietly. "I wanted a fantasy, and you gave me one. But now, I need to wake up." James's flight home was a blur of airports and airplane food and sleepless hours. He'd left the Philippines with nothing but his clothes, his passport, and a hard-earned education in the mathematics of heartbreak. Back in Cleveland, the silence of his house felt different, not empty anymore, just quiet. He began the process of rebuilding his life, both financially and emotionally. He took a part-time job at Home Depot, helping customers in the electrical department. He started volunteering at a local literacy center, teaching adults to read. He called his children more often, actually listening when they talked, instead of just waiting for his turn to speak. Slowly, painfully, he began to forgive himself. 6 months later, he met Patricia Sullivan at a coffee shop in Lakewood. She was 58, recently widowed, with kind eyes and a laugh that reminded him of his grandmother. Their first conversation lasted 3 hours. She asked about his work, his family, his thoughts on everything from Cleveland sports to the books he was reading. She shared stories about her career as a high school librarian, her 2 grown daughters, her dreams of traveling to Ireland to trace her family roots. And here's what struck James most. She never once asked about his financial situation. She didn't need to. She had her own pension, her own savings, her own reasons for being there. "I think," she said during their 4th date, "that the best relationships are between people who choose each other, not people who need each other." James felt something he hadn't experienced since before Sophia. He felt chosen for who he was, not what he could provide. James Thompson learned that love isn't something you can buy, no matter how much money you have or how desperately you want it. Real love is found in the spaces between people who see each other clearly, flaws and all, and choose to stay anyway. Sophia taught him that wanting to be loved can make you vulnerable to those who would exploit that desire. But Patricia taught him that being worthy of love means first learning to love yourself. The $43,000 was gone forever, but James had gained something more valuable: the wisdom to recognize the difference between a transaction and a relationship, between fantasy and reality, between being needed and being loved. He never heard from Sophia again. Sometimes he wondered if she'd married Carlo, if they'd used his money to build the life they'd dreamed of together. He hoped they had. He hoped they were happy, but mostly, he didn't think about it at all.